Bring the lights down low, it's time to show. Lights, camera, you know what we mean. Behold the magic of the silver screen. Some movies rock, some movies shock. They're powerful, alright. We cover them all on your favorite part. So many movies we can choose. Even when you win, you lose. Life moves pretty fast. Some will fizzle and some movies last. I understood there would be no math. It's the 30-something movie podcast. Be excellent to each other. Peace out and word to your mother. They're from the best decades. Movie magic that never fades. Lightsabers clash, phasers set to stun. Action packed from dusk till dawn. We have deep thoughts and questions free. Come share our love of the movies we see. Life moves pretty fast. Some will fizzle and some movies last. I understood there would be no math. It's the 30-something movie podcast.
It's the 30-something movie podcast. In the year of our podcast, 2024, the hosts of the 30-something podcast, fueled by liquid beverages and passion for film, charged the realm of nostalgia. They spoke like movie buffs. They podcasted like true fans and captured the hearts of their listeners. All right, I'm ready for battle.
My soul is prepared. Oops, sorry, wrong movie.
That's okay. It kind of works here too. Yeah. We're talking about Braveheart this time around. We are in we're in 2025 at the time of recording, but 1995, we've started the year off in the last couple of episodes. So Braveheart is our episode this time around. Kind of crazy that we're hitting Braveheart. Our first 2 weeks of 95 so far have been Apollo 13 and Braveheart. So we're kind of firing on all cylinders right out of the gate here. And this is actually the next 2 weeks are going to be our duo of Scottish movies. We've got Braveheart this week and Rob Roy next week. So it's like those years when you have like the multiple westerns or the like multiple this kind of movie or whatever. And 1995, I think, may be the multiple Scottish movies. Like everybody's wanting to tell the Scottish revolutionary stories. So
yes.
Well, as you can hear, I have with me this evening my band of fellow warriors that our fellow warrior poets that are going to charge the fields of Bannockburn here with me. I've got Patrick Canagallo. Patrick Mac Canagallo.
Patrick McCanagallo. I like that. All right, we'll go with that.
Bo McWarmbold.
Hi.
Hi. And Dennis Clan McDonough.
Hi, Lassie.
There you go. And John Reed. Reed's Scottish, so I'll just stick with that.
Yeah, you own it. You own it, man. You just own the Scots there. That's awesome.
I'm sorry, we don't change Reed. I don't make the rules, but no. So we spoil here. We spoil freely. So this is pretty much your only warning. So if we mention a movie and you don't want to hear anything about it, just hit that little skippity skip button on your podcast app of choice. If you haven't been to our website yet, 30podcast.com, you can head over there. You can leave us a rating, a voicemail. You could join us over on Patreon, where we've got a bunch of bonus episodes. At this point, we have a back catalog of over 50 bonus episodes over there. So a lot of good stuff to listen to. And then depending on what level you join us at on Patreon, you can even join us here on the main podcast feed for an episode or tell us what to watch or whatever you want to do, basically.
Make Pat watch a movie he hates. You
could. Yes.
I love that. I love that. John, did you refer to the skip button as the skibbity skip button?
I didn't say skibbity. I said skippity.
Okay.
It was teased.
Let's take it easy.
No.
I'm just okay.
Oh, no.
Okay.
No.
I mean, we're hip, but let's not overdo it.
Let's just,
I'm hip. I'm cool.
Oh, man.
Yeah, no, I didn't say skippity.
I'm just making sure.
If I did, one of my children would probably charge down here and throw something at me. So
I was going to say there are alarms that go off when that happens.
Right. I've got more riz than to say skibbity. So
Oy.
Bo, I appreciate that scowl. That is the right response.
There is only one.
That's true. Yeah, that's true. So Braveheart is our poison that we have picked for this time around. And I think we'll jump right on into the trivia pursuits here. This came out on May 24th, 1995, rated R. Runtime of 2 hours and 58 minutes in all of its Scotty glory. Mel Gibson was the director of this one. He also did The Passion of the Christ and Apocalypto. Writer was Randall Wallace. He was writer for Pearl Harbor. I'm sorry, Pat. And also We Were Soldiers.
Okay.
I know, I shouldn't have mentioned that. But I have actually a really nice surprise for you here in just a minute. So if you can just hold on, like don't leave yet.
You shouldn't have mentioned We Were Soldiers?
No. That one was fine.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No. That was the only movie. That was the only movie that I heard you mention.
Oh, good. Okay. All right. I mean, I have something you're really going to enjoy here in just a minute when we get to the actors that are in this one. So.
Oh, yes.
Yes. Let's get you can jumpstart the little pitter patter of your heart here in a second. So,
every actor was in this movie.
Every actor, yes. Producers for this one were Mel Gibson, Alan Ladd Jr., and Bruce Davey. Gibson did Hacksaw Ridge and Apocalypto. Ladd Jr. did Star Wars, A New Hope, and Alien. Davey did The Singing Detective and Push. Composer was James Horner, who did Titanic, Avatar, and Rocketeer. Cinematography was done by John Toll, who did Legends of the Fall and The Thin Red Line. Editor was Steven Rosenblum, who did Glory and The Last Samurai. Icon Productions and the Ladd Company were the production companies. The budget was somewhere in the 53 to 72 million range. The movie made 213 million. It gets a 78 on Flick Metrics and an A- on Cinema Score. Actors
and
for this.
For James Horner, our first two movies this year have both been scored by James Horner.
Yes. Yeah. Apollo 13 and Braveheart. Yeah. So it's far for me as a huge James Horner fan, it's been a really good year so far.
It's been a banner year.
I say we just stop here.
Well, let's take a look at that list. I think we can, you know what I'm saying?
We got
going. Room for a few more.
I think so. I think we can keep going a little bit. All right. Mel Gibson played William Wallace. I am William Wallace. Lethal Weapon series, the Mad Max series. Pat, here's the one I think you're probably going to enjoy. Sophie Marceau, who I have always liked to refer to as, and you'll appreciate this one, the French Monica Bellucci. Mm-hmm. She played Princess Isabel. She was in The World Is Not Enough. And Pat, if you haven't heard of this movie, which I might be shocked if you haven't, may I refer you to a movie called Don't Look Back?
Yes, you may.
Have you seen this movie?
Yes.
Oh, good. Okay. I was going to be shocked if you hadn't.
Yes.
Okay.
Happy.
Okay, for those who have not seen, so Dennis and Bo, I don't know if you've seen this movie or not. Don't Look Back stars both Sophie Marceau and Monica Bellucci.
Wow.
So it's basically like, I'm trying to think. What is something that would just cause every molecule in Pat's body to explode simultaneously? Is there something scientific for that?
The combination of those two.
I'm going to call it the Marceau Bellucci effect.
Mm-hmm. There it is.
Yeah. So Pat, Pat, I am not shocked that you've seen that movie. I was going to be really happy if I was the person to introduce you to it, and then we might be best friends forever.
Well, how about this? Should we go back? We could do like the best friends forever one. What movie was that, John?
Don't Look Back. Have you heard of it?
I have not heard of it. Tell me of this movie.
You should check it out. It's got two of your favorite people in it.
Oh, wow. I know what I'm watching tonight after the episode.
There you go. I am going to point out we probably won't be covering it on the podcast until 2039.
Oh, we'll be here.
So you've got a little bit of time.
We got some time, but
your soul can be prepared.
I'm told I'm going to be waiting.
Yeah. That's the next time we ask him, like, Pat, what movie are you looking forward to now that we've done Batman 89? Don't Look Back.
Don't look back.
Pat, we're not that won't be until 2039. I don't care.
That's okay, man. That's okay. Lock it in.
I can wait. I'm locked in. I can wait.
I'm gonna be like the Terminator in Genesis, right? I'm just gonna go hole up for a little bit. And,
just hang out.
And then when you appear naked on the highway, I'll come pick you up.
There you go. Gosh,
anybody that hasn't seen that movie just got spoiled and disturbed at the same time.
That's gonna happen way before 2039. I'm just telling you.
was going to say it.
And probably multiple times in between.
I was going to say a few more weeks like we've been having, we're all going to end up naked on the highway somewhere.
Wow, John does this a remarkable amount. This is kind of weird.
Oh boy.
It's because I ran out of the Lagavulin.
Yeah.
Had to find some other way. Patrick McGowan, who passed in 2009, played King Edward I, Edward the Longshanks. He was in the TV series The Prisoner and Escape from Alcatraz. Catherine McCormick played Murren. She was in 28 Weeks Later and Spy Game. Angus MacFadyen played Robert the Bruce. He was in Equilibrium and Saw 3. Also in the TV series Superman and Lois as the hologram of Jor-El. Brendan Gleeson played Hamish. He was in Bruges and Harry Potter and the Goblet of Fire. David O'Hara was Stephen. It is his island, by the way. He was in The Departed and Wanted. Ian Bannon played Robert the Bruce Sr. He was in Flight of the Phoenix and Waking Ned Devine. Brian Cox was Argyle Wallace. He was in X2, X-Men United and Troy. And Peter Hanley was Prince Edward. He was in the TV series Ballykissangel and Some Mother's Son. All right, a couple of quick trivia things before we move on into the synopsis and our major moments for this one. Mel Gibson actually was initially reluctant to take this one on because he figured at age 38 he was too old to play the character who historically had died at age 35. But Paramount actually said, you know what, if we're going to finance the film, you're going to be the star. So you have to do it. So that was how he ended up playing the part. Here was an interesting one I don't know that I had heard of before. Up to 1,600 extras, mostly from the Irish Army Reserve, participated in battle scenes, but because there were some rivalries between companies, that led to some unexpectedly realistic combat. So,
quick on, and maybe you're going to cover this later, but if Mel wasn't going to do it, who else was up for that role?
I don't know. I didn't see any other.
I didn't either. I think the studio's like, nah, that's okay.
You're it.
Okay, all right.
Yeah.
And I'm going to say,
yeah.
And I'm going to say, I find it interesting that if the real William Wallace died at 35, that Mel Gibson at 38, that was the reason he thought he was too old.
Yeah.
Because it's not like the real William Wallace survived all this and died an old man, right?
Yeah.
Like so I find that interesting, like that, you know.
I mean, most of the story, most of Wallace's, the historical Wallace, I believe from what I recall, most of his military escapades lasted over the course of 2 years. Mm-hmm. It wasn't a long time period. So it's not like, Mel Gibson at age 38 is, if he's trying to play a 30-year-old William Wallace, that's not a stretch. Mm-hmm. And I'd hazard a guess and say that a 38-year-old in 1995 probably looks younger than a 30-year-old in the 13th century.
I'd go with that as a general yes.
I would imagine that the actual William Wallace probably had a bit of a rougher life than Mel Gibson has had. I'm going to take a wild guess there.
Yeah, I would think.
Yeah. Interesting.
Yeah. Here was kind of a funny one. And this goes into, and we can talk a little bit later about some of the historical inaccuracies of the movie, because they have admitted that there's a lot of historical inaccuracy in this movie. Yeah. The Battle of Stirling is actually called the Battle of Stirling Bridge. And quick, let's survey the hosts here. Do you guys remember the bridge in that battle scene?
I think there was a stream. Was that a creek?
There might have been.
There may have been a creek.
Might have been a creek, but no bridge. No bridge in that one. And so they kind of joked about this. When a local asked why the Battle of Stirling Bridge was being filmed without a bridge, Mel Gibson said, the bridge got in the way. And apparently the local replied back to him and said, that's what the English found too. So historically, the Battle of Stirling Bridge was a bit of a, if you remember your movie 300 or your history, is a little bit of kind of a hot gates kind of a situation where they funneled the English onto the bridge and then were able to limit the number that were coming across. And that was what gave them the tactical and numerical advantage at that point. So, I mean, that is pretty much the major historical plot point of that battle, and the battle looks nothing like it would have historically. So that is just kind of one of the many examples of highly fictionalizing this entire thing to make it look good for Hollywood.
Yeah.
My understanding is that if you want a little bit more of an accurate take on this time period, that Chris Pine was in a movie either called The Bruce or Robert the Bruce. And that was just a few years ago, and he played Robert the Bruce in that movie. And that supposedly is, I don't know if it's 100% accurate or even 90% accurate, but supposedly it's a more accurate depiction of, not necessarily some of these events, but some of the similar events around the time period.
Yeah.
But yeah, some of the other stuff we're going to find is as we get into the movie, like the historical accuracy part of it is, you did not have, like, for example, he was not really a commoner as was seen in the movie. He was from kind of a minor noble family. He wasn't as high up as some of the other nobles, but he was a noble. So not a commoner. There was not, as far as we know, his revenge was not,
Best served cold.
It was not best served cold. That's a good way of putting it. But also had nothing to do with the murder of a wife or anything like that. So the whole catalyst for this was.
Did you already say the relationship with Princess What's-Her-What wasn't a thing?
That did not happen because I believe she was a young child living in France during William Wallace's lifetime. So unless they had a very, very strange relationship over the medieval version of FaceTime, then no.
Coconuts.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
Carried by African swallows or European swallows?
I don't know.
Oh, well, I don't either. It was my understanding there would be no medieval math. Yeah. Yeah. So yes, no relationship between him and Princess Isabella of France. No revenge for a dead wife. None of that stuff. So it was all just basically
he just wanted to kick some English booty.
Exactly. It was just all part of a larger Scottish resistance to King Edward I and disputed succession after King Alexander III of Scotland had died. And it was just more along the lines of that kind of stuff. So
That sounds great.
the other thing, too, some of the other historical inaccuracies while we're on this point is kilts were not actually worn in William Wallace's era. They came much, much later. In fact, I believe the word kilt didn't even come in until the 1600s. So they would have worn, at the time, they would have worn more like just these tunics and maybe some of these like longer cloths that would eventually kind of evolve into the kilts that we would see a few hundred years later. But and the blue face paint also was not something that would have been from Pictish warriors. That would have been from hundreds of years before that. It would not have necessarily been something that Scottish warriors would have done.
Mel just wanted a little air under there. He figured the kilt would be comfortable.
Right. When you're charging the battlefield and
have fun storming the battlefield.
You need to feel the breeze through your hair and through your underwear and your right.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. Have fun storming the castle. Woohoo!
That's cold.
It's fine Scottish weather. All right, so that's some of the historical inaccuracy pieces. Supposedly, Mel Gibson has offered to pay $5 to anybody who could spot the fake horses in the film, and so far, I guess nobody has been able to spot them.
Oh.
So I don't know if that's just a joke and there weren't really any horses to spot, or. But apparently, he's offered $5. So if you can spot a fake horse,
$5?
$5 whole dollars.
That's impressive.
Yeah, but I mean, hey, if that's $1995, then that might be worth something today.
Right.
So, if he had offered me Bitcoin, then
Wow.
I'd take him up on it.
We might not be sitting here talking to you.
That's also true. The entire speech, "They may take our lives, but they'll never take our freedom," completely made up. There was no such inspiring speech by William Wallace. He may have given some other inspiring speech, but not that one. So, all right. Well, those are the historical inaccuracies. A little bit of trivia on the front end of this one. Real quick, I do want to mention, because this may be one of the first times that any of the listeners have been listening and will catch this slight difference. I have started to put our episodes up on YouTube. However, YouTube does not like it when we play music that is copyrighted music, and sometimes that comes in when we play the trailers. So we most likely will not be playing the trailer audio on the episodes, at least for the time being, unless we can figure out a way around the YouTube stuff. But I will link it onto the YouTube videos, so you'll be able to spot them there as well. And they're usually always linked in our podcast show notes. So we'll be doing the synopsis. We'll do your major moments, but you may not be hearing the YouTube audio, because we want to make sure that anybody listening on YouTube does not get our video blocked. Because when I did the initial upload, it told me that there was a large percentage of our 500 and whatever episodes that were like, this may be blocked in some countries. And I'm like, well, that defeats the purpose.
Yeah, come on now.
Tell those countries to...
I don't think it's those countries. I think it might be YouTube. I'm going to put blame on them.
Yeah. Blame the... Yeah.
It's easier to blame the big corporation.
Of course.
Yeah.
No. All right. In a land broken by the chains of tyranny, a man must rise to answer the call. I am William Wallace, driven by love for my people and the fire of vengeance for those we've lost. And with the courage of the Princess Isabel, the strength of Hamish, the wit of Stephen and his island, we stand united. Together we fight not for land or riches, but for one true prize, our freedom. Are you not inspired?
I am.
I am inspired.
Good.
I thought that was going to be said with an accent, though, but...
I feel like I tried the accent earlier, and I might have offended all of Scotland, and I don't want to do that.
Yeah.
So I also tried it earlier and had at least one of my children just look at me like I had lobsters crawling out of my ears. So
Yeah, but isn't that every day?
it is. But yeah. I love Scotland, so I don't want to do anything to offend them. And I know my Scottish accent or attempt at Scottish accent would just be awful.
Self-awareness is good.
It is. It is. That's the first step to making a change and being a better person. So
Right.
I have a lot of steps to get there. Major moments for this one. We divided this one up into 10 major moments. Major moment number 1, I'm calling first moment, or prima momento. That's not even a Latin word.
Yeah.
No, but
Prima momento really works, though.
Yeah. I'm reinstituting the practice of prima momento. And
okay.
that's where an English lord can read off the first major moment of the list on the first recording of our podcast.
You get to spend the night with our podcast before anyone else does.
Right. Yes. You get to listen to our podcast first before. Yes. Which, oddly enough, that was the one thing that kept the English out of Scotland. They were like, no, thank you. I think I'm okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Nope, nothing to see here. Move along.
Nothing to see or listen to here. I'm good. Thank you. I'm just going to go to the next town over. I think they've got an NPR or something. In 1280, after the death of Alexander III of Scotland, King Edward the Longshanks invades and conquers the country. Young William Wallace witnesses the brutality of his rule, including the execution of Scottish nobles and the deaths of both his father and brother during an uprising. Wallace's uncle Argyle takes him in, giving him an education and broadening his perspective during a pilgrimage throughout Europe that he takes him on. Moment 2, some years later, Wallace returns to his homeland, now under English control. Longshanks has granted his noblemen land and privileges, including prima nocta, the right to sleep with newlywed brides on their wedding night. He institutes prima nocta in Scotland to encourage English lords to emigrate despite some high taxes. Little trivia note here, there is actually no historical evidence that this was actually a thing. So it sounds awful, and it sounds like the kind of awful thing you might expect from the medieval people, but apparently, well, I'm not going to say they weren't that bad, but apparently prima nocta, not necessarily a thing. So when someone says they're going to go medieval on you, at least you can discount that one.
Okay.
Yeah.
I mean, other things may happen, but it won't be prima nocta. William is reunited with his friend Hamish at a village wedding, and at this event, some English soldiers arrive, and the local lord takes the new bride with him to enforce the new practice. And there's that line from Longshanks when he's kind of working this out with his council, and it's the line, well, the trouble with Scotland is that it's full of Scots, and if we can't get them out, we'll breed them out. Establishing him as a pretty horrible dude.
Yeah.
Next moment, Wallace reunites with his childhood friend Murren. They go for a ride, and he gets her caught up on where he's been all these years. At the end of their first date, he gives her back the thistle she had given him when they were children. He's been carrying around with him this entire time. Hamish's father invites William to a secret meeting, but he declines, saying that basically he just wants to raise crops and a family in peace. And not too long after, William and Murren marry in secret to protect her from the English. And later, when Murren resists being raped by an English soldier, she is captured and publicly executed. Then, consumed by grief and rage, Wallace leads a small uprising against the English garrison in his hometown, killing the soldiers and sending a pretty powerful message to Longshanks that you don't mess with the Scots. And we get, I mean, this is not one of the, major battles in this, but we get an idea of just how brutal this movie is going to be. Because in this scene where they have this uprising in his town, I mean, there's some guys that get their heads smashed in with maces, and one guy gets his leg cut off, like completely just chopped off. Yeah.
No leg for you.
Yeah. Bo, you're going to remember this better than I am. And I'm sorry, I apologize ahead of time for bringing this up. The game where the Bears lost to Washington because of the Hail Mary. Okay. I'm sorry. What was the name of the player who was not paying any attention at all? He's like goofing off with the crowd while all this stuff is happening.
Yeah. I've blocked these painful memories. Sorry, okay. I'll try to find it, but I think it was Gordon, wasn't it?
I'm Googling it real quick. Tyreek Stevenson.
That's it. Yep.
Okay. So cornerback Tyreek Stevenson. And I'm sure anybody listening who watches American football knows exactly what we're talking about, because it's probably one of the most embarrassing. Well, I mean, the entire Bears season is one of the most embarrassing things right now. But a few weeks ago, there was a moment, and if you want to go check out the video, I mean, we're not going to, but if you want to go check out the video of the final play of the game where the Bears lose on a Hail Mary pass, there is a Bears player that's just like egging the crowd on, not paying any attention to anything at all, and then at the last second, like, turns and realizes, oh, crap, and then sees what's going on around him. The reason I bring all this up is because, and this scene has always, and I know it's not intended to do so, has always made me kind of laugh out loud. There are two moments in this movie where there's two characters in this movie that completely pull a Tyreek Stevenson. One of them is in this initial uprising. There's an uprising going on, and there's the guys that are up on the tower in the little fort in this. Hamish's father grabs a spear and chucks a spear at a guy. Mm-hmm. The guy that gets speared, looking in the complete opposite direction of where the battle is taking place. So I noticed
is that Hamish's dad wasting a spear on a guy who's not doing any fighting?
Right. There's that. Yeah. But I look at that, and the first thing I thought when I saw it this time as I was watching it the other day, I was like, that's a complete Tyreek Stevenson move. Yeah. The other one, and I just about guarantee you guys could probably pick this out too. The other one that I'm thinking of is in the battle scene where the Scots all lift up their kilts and are mooning the other side.
Yep.
And when they start letting the arrows fly, everybody gets under their shields except for the one guy that's still mooning them and not paying attention.
Yep.
And gets an arrow right in the butt cheek. Yeah. The other Star Trek podcast we enjoy has an award they give out each episode that's called the Drunk Shimoda.
Yeah.
I'm thinking that this movie needs an award for the Tyreek Stevenson. The character that's just not paying attention and gets a spear or an arrow somewhere in their body because of it.
Preferably the buttocks.
Preferably I got an arrow in the buttocks.
I wanted to real quick jump back to one of your other major moments when Wallace is back and fixing up his home.
Yeah, get back to where you once belonged, man. What's going on?
And Murrin, Murrin's dad comes up with the other cats, and they're all like, "We're going to a secret meeting and all that." And William Wallace is like, "Nope, I came here, like raise a family, chew bubble gum. I'm out about it." So.
Yeah.
And then Murrin's dad says, "Hey," and I can't. Like, the dialogue is just written so well, but he's just like, "Well, hey, anyone that wants to court my daughter, that's what I'm looking for, is to stay involved.
Right.
So you show me that, you can court my daughter.
If you
can, didn't I just show you that?
Yeah.
No.
Yeah.
Oh, well, maybe later, maybe. Well, it is. I had to rewind it several times this time because it's just so well done, and they deliver it so well. It just seems so real.
Yeah.
He's like, no. And
he's just, right. And Murrin's father rides off, and William is just standing there kind of bewildered. He's like, "What? No, I didn't. Oh, okay."
So I just want to give a shout out to that, and we'll get into the deep thoughts later. But I thought that scene was just so well written and so well played, and just brought out the humanity in these characters to such a high degree.
Yeah.
So
yeah. The next moment, Longshanks orders his son, Prince Edward, to suppress Wallace's growing rebellion because he's heading off to France to fight in some campaigns there. Meanwhile, Wallace's victories are attracting the attention of Robert the Bruce, a contender for the Scottish crown. However, Robert's father advises him to curry favor with the English. Curry. And the Scottish nobles.
I knew you were going to do that.
Thank you. I think of London. I think of curry. And I get hungry. The Scottish nobles, rather than join up with Wallace, revealing there's some internal political divisions going on within Scotland. And then they start to get more and more people that are joining their cause. And this is one of my favorite scenes in the movie. And that is when we meet Stephen for the first time. And Stephen the Irishman shows up and starts laughing and is talking up to the sky. "Him? That can't be William Wallace. I'm prettier than this man. All right, father, I'll ask him. If I risk my neck for you, will I get a chance to kill Englishmen?" And then Hamish is like, "Is your father a ghost, or do you converse with the Almighty? In order to find his equal, an Irishman is forced to talk to God."
I love that line. I love that line.
And there's a line, like one or two lines after that I can't necessarily repeat if we're staying family friendly, but
just answer the question.
He says, "Don't change the subject and answer the question."
Yeah.
Yeah.
I like it when he says he's ripping on him, but he pulls out the knife and he's like, "I'm smart enough to get a knife past your guards."
Smart enough to get a dagger past your guards, old man. Yeah. And then I love it. I like all his lines in the movie. Pick any line from Stephen, and they are absolutely hilarious because there's the scene, the aforementioned scene where the guy gets the arrow in the buttocks, and they're all underneath their shields, and an arrow just comes right like halfway through, I think, William's shield, and Stephen is right next to him, and he goes something like, "Well, I've asked the Almighty, and he thinks he can get me through this, but he's pretty sure you're effed."
Yeah.
That is one of the best. There's a lot of quotable lines in this movie, but that one.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's good stuff.
And he's crazy, or he acts crazy through this entire movie. But then as you get later on into the movie, he's actually one of the kindest characters in the whole thing. Like even when Hamish gets angry and like storms away and punches William in the face, like Stephen is still there, and he is just like he's pretty much unwavering. He's like, "Hey, I'm do whatever you need me to do, and I'll take care of you, and I'll make sure that everybody's doing okay, and I'll protect you." And So, I mean, throughout the entire thing, he acts crazy, but by the time you reach the end of this movie, like he is probably one of the best characters in this whole movie.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah.
Has he been in anything notable that you can remember or no?
The actor was also in, what did I say earlier? He was in The Departed.
Oh, okay, yeah.
And Wanted. David O'Hara is his name. And he has been, let's see, he was in a movie called The Matchmaker. He was in the Shakespeare movie Tristan and Isolde. What else has he been in? He has been in, The Departed, Cowboys and Aliens he was in. What else? He was in 3 episodes of Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. a few years ago. Wanted. Was Wanted the one where they were curving the bullet?
Okay,
Wasn't that the Angelina Jolie, James McAvoy one where the assassins learned to curve the bullet?
I didn't see it.
Oh, you didn't see that one? They did it. That one was kind of funny. There was the whole gimmick. If I'm thinking of the right one, the whole gimmick in that movie was that you could fire your gun in such a way that it curves the bullet so it goes around someone and hits the target behind them.
Oh, sure.
And at some point, what were the guys called? Mythbusters. Mythbusters actually did an episode where they tried to curve the bullet and see if it was actually true. And I don't remember if they could do it or not, but I don't think it was true.
Yeah,
I gotta go with no on that one.
Yeah.
Yeah, but he was in that movie. That movie had a ton of people in it too. Angelina Jolie, James McAvoy, Morgan Freeman, Terrence Stamp was in it. Common was in it. There's a ton of people in that movie.
Yeah.
So, So maybe he learned to curve the bullet. Let's see what else we got. Then we kind of, at this point, we get into the Battle of Stirling, or what historically should have been the Battle of Stirling Bridge. And Wallace is able to unite the Scottish clans and achieves his greatest triumph at the Battle of Stirling. And then he's got this whole plan of building these long spears, and that's how they're going to take down the British cavalry. And what I also laughed a little bit about watching it this time was the scene where the Scottish nobles are all arguing with each other. And they're like, is it 300 horses? We can't stand up to 300. Well, at least let's go out there and negotiate. And the camera pans away from them while they're arguing with each other about the best way to surrender. And as it pans along to all the soldiers, and it gets to the 2 guys that are like, what are they talking about? I don't know. I can't hear them. And I love that scene for a couple of different reasons, because I think very rarely you get a war movie or any kind of a battle scene where it pans away from the generals or the heroes and goes to, for lack of a better term, goes to the grunts that are there on the front line, and is them just being like, so what do you think's going on? Like, we're gonna die for these guys? That's kind of a joke. The other thing, the reason I laughed at it, because what it made me think of was Monty Python and the Life of Brian.
Yeah.
And when Jesus is giving the Sermon on the Mount and you pan over to the people who are in the back and can't hear anything.
Yeah.
Oi, speak up. What did he say? I think he said, blessed are the cheesemakers. No, he said, blessed are the meek. Oh, good. They've had a hell of a time. So that's what I'm thinking of as we're panning away from the generals and getting to where the troops are.
Who's going to save the cheesemakers?
Right. And then I do love Stephen's line when we get up here. The Almighty says this must be a fashionable fight. It's drawn the finest people.
Yeah.
We have, of course, they end up victorious here, but I love when William rides up, and this was a moment when I was in high school and I was on the offensive line for our football team. We had our offensive line.
Offensive is right.
Emphasis on offensive. We had our offensive line coach, and he was like this ex-Marine, big tough looking guy, and every time we do our part of the practice, and the defense was practicing on a separate field, and when it was time to have a bit of a scrimmage, I remember one time, like, he just, in the middle of what we were doing, he just stopped and kind of looked at everybody and just started walking towards the defensive field. And we're all sitting there, and I remember we got this going perfectly. Somebody asked him, he's like, "Coach, what are you doing? We're not done yet. Where are you going?" And he just turns and looks at us and goes, "I'm going to pick a fight."
Yeah.
And so I love that when William rides up and he's like, "I'm going to pick a fight." And then he rides up and he's like, "Here are Scotland's terms. Lower your flags, march straight back to England, and basically stop in every town along the way and apologize for 100 years of rape, theft, and murder." And then "I'm not done. Before we allow you to leave, your general must cross this battlefield, put his head between his legs, and kiss his own arse." And that's the point where we've gone a non-existent bridge too far, and the British then run back and tell their general what he said, and they're not so happy. And so he goes back and tells the he gives his speech in this scene too, where he does the whole "they may take our lives, but they'll never take our freedom" speech. They're victorious at the end of this battle. Battle's over, and then they decide to start pushing into England. He's like, "Well, I'm going to invade. I'm going to press our advantage, and we're going to go into England, and we're going to invade. We're going to take some of their towns back." So ends up sacking York, continuing the rebellion. Longshanks returns from France and confronts his son and his failure to kind of put down this rebellion. They receive a package and a message from the city of York, which is also an awkward scene, because you just look at this poor guy that delivered the package, and the moment that the king says, "You may leave," he's like, "Thank you, sir."
Yep.
And he just runs out of that room as fast as he can. Because they open the package and it's the king's nephew's head. At this point, then Longshanks also tosses Edward's friend Philip out the window, even though he is skilled in the art of war and military tactics, sire.
Who is this person that talks to me like I value his opinion? I love that line.
Who speaks
I
to
don't
me?
think I got it exactly right.
That's it. Who is this who speaks to me as if I value his, or something like that, as if I needed his opinion?
Yeah.
That line is getting frequent play after this rewatch of Braveheart.
I was going to say, I feel like maybe that's a good line to use as a parent.
Yeah.
Who is this person who speaks to me as if I needed their opinion?
Or a faculty meeting.
Or that. Yeah.
Anywhere.
Yeah, I feel like "I am skilled in the art of war and military tactics, sire" is just code word, like data for "I am fully functional in multiple techniques."
Indeed.
So Longshanks end up sending Isabel to negotiate with William, but it's really a trap to keep him in York, while Longshanks sends an army to Edinburgh to cut him off. Isabel sends William a note warning via her lady-in-waiting, who Hamish maybe has a little crush on, who warns him of Longshanks' plan and grows sympathetic to his cause. And William then continues to try to get the Robert the Bruce to unite the clans together so that they actually have a chance. And then we have the Battle of Falkirk, and this is where Longshanks himself comes in, and it's a terrible defeat and betrayal, because William is abandoned by the other nobles. We come to find out that the Black Knight who always triumphs, that was sitting next to Longshanks as the battle was going on, we find out was Robert the Bruce the entire time. But backing up a little bit, at the beginning of this, Longshanks is like, "Well, send in the Irish." And he's like, "Well, sir, we, their archers are miles away, and we, why don't we use the archers? Like, we could do that." He's like, "No, arrows cost money. The dead cost nothing. Send in the Irish." And so we have the charge of the Irish Brigade as they go marching in, and the Scots charge to meet them, and they meet in the middle, and it's just, and I love this scene every time I watch it. And then they slow up, and everybody just starts hugging and shaking hands, and "Oh, good morning, happy to see you." Good. And then I love the line that Longshanks is just standing there, and he just looks and he just goes, "Irish." And then I think William is like, watch this. And then he like waves the flag, and their archers who have the fire arrows launch the arrows, and they had kind of pre-treated the ground early on to be a bit more flammable. And which looks like it's going to give him the advantage, but ultimately the rest of the Scottish army leaves, abandons him, and while he is almost taken captive or killed, he does find out that Robert the Bruce was the knight that was at Longshank's side. Stephen shows up and is able to get William out of there before anything happens to him.
And he's just crushed to see Robert the Bruce.
Absolutely. Like he's almost just gives up right there.
Yeah.
It's like my bet. We watched that 3 times today at work.
Did you?
I was with Danny. Yeah. That's just a great scene with very little words.
Yeah.
Such a transition, both of their personalities and what happens there.
Yeah. And again, a shout out to the score that I'm sorry, Dennis, I cut across you, but the score fills in so much of the emotion in so many of these scenes, but that one especially when they play that theme. I'm sorry, I interrupted you in your thought.
When you say it's the perfect scene with the music and both of their looks in their eyes.
Yeah.
Like one of like Mel Gibson's like best scenes ever, and it made it the amount of her. I've played that before because there's times where I've used that almost like as a meme, not a meme, but like this is how I feel like when somebody really lets you down. Mm-hmm. I've lost, like, oh my God, like the look in her, almost like an animal. He almost looks like a puppy dog that just like you just did something to him. And he just looks sad and I'm done. And he's going to lay down instead of killing you. He could just kill you. Mm-hmm. He could be, instead, the amount of hurt that overwhelms him in that scene. And then to watch Robert the Bruce actually see the hurt, what it does to him, and how it then changes him, and he's putting him on a horse and letting him go. It's a great scene. I just love that scene.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
That's like that's like an Oscar for both of them should have given just for that scene.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Like, how do you? I was just trying to think. Like, you write that. I'd love to see what the screenplay says. You know,
for that scene. Yeah.
Right. Well, it's gonna look hurt. You know, look hurt, look depressed. Like, but how they carry that out and how it's very much like in Schindler's List. Spielberg was always talking about like how like there's the scene where Schindler and what's his name Ben Kingsley's character are dialoguing back and forth about a drink they're going to have when it's all over, and there's this moment where they like look at each other and they were always saying like you don't know how long the look should be. Like I don't get how you write how do you write that? You can't write that. I don't know. It's just that's actors taking that and really becoming, I don't know. I just think it's an amazing scene from a writer's perspective too. Mm-hmm. The fact of like how do you write, like you can describe it, but how do you make that actually happen on camera? That's just all performance right there. Maybe it's director, I don't know, but I mean he's the director, so
yeah.
Because you could tell, like somebody else would have made that scene shorter, quicker. Maybe had dialogue thrown in there, but they decided to do none of that and just trust it. And it was like, it's just so good. I just love that scene. I think it's the perfect scene.
So I don't know. I don't know if this is the actual screenplay. But I tried to do a Google search to see if I could find a copy of the screenplay. And again, I don't know if this is the actual one. But in this screenplay, it says, let's see. The Scots hold their own. An English knight tries to ride over William. He knocks the lance aside, and though the horse slams into him, William also unseats the rider. The rider rolls to his feet. William struggles up to meet him and comes face to face with Robert the Bruce. The shocking recognition stunned Wallace. In that moment, looking at Robert the Bruce's guilt-ridden face, he understands everything, the betrayal, the hopelessness of Scotland. As he stands there frozen, a bolt punches into the muscle of his neck, and William doesn't react to it. Bruce is horrified at the sight of Wallace this way. He batters at Wallace's sword as if its use would give him absolution. Fight me, Robert says, but Wallace can only stagger back. Bruce's voice grows ragged as he screams, fight me. All around the battle has decayed. The Scots are being slaughtered. So again, I don't know if this is the actual screenplay or something that somebody just wrote up here, but so it tries to capture a little bit of that scene.
Well, I think the interesting thing is historically that never happens. There is no proof, correct?
Right. Yeah.
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 That's a great scene, and it wasn't in there.
Yeah. Yeah.
Player slug, or the which one would you look at on that? Like, what site were you looking at for the
Let's see. What did I find?
screenplay? And then there's one that's like a slug, something slug, or whatever I think it's called, script slug.
Yeah, this one, the sellingyourscreenplay.com, and it claims to be by R. Wallace, which, you know, could be Randall Wallace.
Okay.
Yeah, so there's a couple of them out there.
What page was that on? You know,
That's a good question.
yeah, I'm just gonna scroll down. I'll try and find it. Hold on. That's fine now because I have another one on script slug, so I was just wondering. It looks,
Okay, yeah. So after this, William kind of gets back into it and conducts a bit of guerrilla warfare and exacts vengeance on the traitorous nobles one by one. William does meet with Isabel again. She was sent by Longshanks to lure him into a trap, but he sussed it out ahead of time, thanks to her warning him again. And then he meets up with her later to thank her for saving his life, and they engage in, let's call it, diplomatic relations.
Yes.
Yeah. Padme would call it aggressive negotiations.
There you go.
Wallace is betrayed by Robert the Bruce's father and is ultimately captured. Taken to London, Wallace speaks with Princess Isabel and tells her he will not ask for mercy. Ultimately, he is tried for high treason. She tries to beg for his life, but Longshanks is so sick he is bedridden and can't even speak. Here we also get the famous line where he tries to explain to her, because she's distraught that he's going to die, and he says, "Every man dies, not every man really lives." And then we get to the torture scene. "Confess, and you shall have mercy." Despite being tortured, he steadfastly refuses to submit to the English rule, becoming a symbol of defiance. As he is executed, he summons his last strength to cry out freedom. And this inspires the Scottish people, haunting the dying Longshanks and ensuring that his legacy is going to endure. We end the movie in 1314. Actually, the final quote: "In the year of our Lord 1314, patriots of Scotland, starving and outnumbered, charged the fields of Bannockburn. They fought like warrior poets, and they fought like Scotsmen, and they won their freedom." For a few years, until the English came back and got him again.
Nasty English Canadians.
Yeah, right. Nasty, big, pointy English Canadians. All right. Those are the major moments. So, see if we've got any deep thoughts. If any thoughts are going to be plunged deeply into our guts, like the many swords and axes in this movie.
And now, deep thoughts.
I have an opinion on this matter.
Don't mince words, Bones. What do you really think?
I like it a lot. Wow. It's very deep. Thank you.
All right. I'm just going to kick it off with this. I love this movie. I fully understand the historical inaccuracies. I've been to, our family, when we lived over in the UK for a while, we've been to a bunch of these places. I've been to Stirling, been to Edinburgh, been to a lot of these different locations that they talk about here. And, I've seen the William Wallace statue and, been to some of the museums and all those bits and pieces. And so the history is different, very different than the movie, but I absolutely love this movie. Like, I could watch this movie. I don't care that it's 3 hours. I could watch it over and over again. And there's a lot of this movie, other than a Star Wars movie, there's not a ton of movies that I could probably quote, line for line, and especially one being this long. I do feel like there are long stretches of this movie. There are long shanks of this movie that I could probably go line for line and remember every single word, or I know exactly what's going to happen next. It just, yeah.
How many times did you say you've seen it?
Oh, God.
In its entirety, from start to finish?
In its entirety, from start to finish, I've seen it at least 10 to 15 times.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
Anyone else close to that or no?
No way.
Yeah.
Yeah.
John,
I'm saying
being-
I may have seen it twice.
Okay.
I'm going to solid 5.
Okay.
I would say I'm somewhere between like Dennis and John. Because it's always like, yeah, I've seen it a bunch, but then when you put that caveat, okay, top beginning to end, yeah, but it's been a bunch that I know I've seen this.
Yeah, I mean, if you throw in pieces or clips or halves or whatever that you saw, then it's up there further. But like, where I've actually sat down with people and said, like, okay, you need to see this movie. We're sitting down watching it. Like, first it's you, and you do it multiple times yourself. I think I got 3 in pretty quickly on my own, and then it became, you know, you get married, you have kids, and it's like, okay, eventually the kids get older, so it's there. One with the spouse. It's like that's 4, that's 5. Yeah, it's got to be probably between 5 to 8 in its entirety. I would say somewhere around there.
So I have the DVD of this, but the version I ended up watching this time around was on one of the streaming services. But it's so funny because the most I've watched this movie was when I had the double VHS tape of this thing. And it was funny when it got to I knew exactly when it was about to happen. And in my brain, when it got to the part where Longshanks is like, if I send my son, I mean, the mere sight of my weak son will, will incite him to, press his advantage further. And then he gets to that line where he's trying to decide who should he, have go talk to William Wallace. And there's the lines, he goes, whom shall I send? Whom shall I send? And then it cuts to a scene of, I think, William Wallace, like at nighttime sleeping and he's having a dream. But when he does that line, whom shall I send? Whom shall I send? That's where the first VHS ended. And you'd have to switch the tape over. So I'm watching the streaming version and like some reflex within me is like, oh man, I got to get up and change the tape. Wait. Yeah. No, I don't.
What is this tape you speak of?
Yeah. I have to be kind and rewind the other one first and then I'll pop tape 2 in. Yeah. No, I have seen this movie so many times. And there are times where I'd even, if I was doing something else, I'd even just put this movie on in the background. So I may have seen it more than 15 times, just not where I was actually sitting paying attention to the full thing. And then in terms of bits and pieces, like I said, our football one of our football coaches loved this movie, and we had a big screen TV in the football locker room. And this movie was constantly on the big screen TV in the football locker room. It was a combination of this, the movie, The Program, starring James Caan, and when nobody was looking, one of the guys brought in a copy of Eddie Murphy Raw.
Nice.
So those were the 3 things that got played on the big screen TV in the locker room.
Yeah.
Well, I would say the testament on how many times even Pat, John especially, and then I've seen it, is like it's a 3-hour movie.
Oh yeah.
That's difficult.
That's commitment. What that is.
It is, and it's one of those things. If it's like, it's hard to kind of that's a 3-hour movie, and I've already seen it. To go and see it again and consciously keep saying I want to see that again. Oh, I'm good for the 3-hour. It doesn't happen too often.
I find
out there that are long, and there's times where I'm just like, I just can't sit down for the 3 hours today. I got too much going on, whatever it is. It's like, but that one I've been managed to do it that many times is pretty remarkable.
And I think what's interesting about this is this isn't one of those movies that, it's on. I'm just going to start it wherever when you find it.
Oh, yeah.
If I happen upon this movie and it's in the middle, I've got to go back and start at the beginning. Like I'll never like pick it up in the middle. Like if I'm sitting there starting at the middle, like, yep, let me just go back.
How actually the times that I repeated watch it was I would catch a clip from, you kind of forget about, you catch it on TV, you catch part of it. Like you said, you see a scene and you're like, oh shit, I got to go see this again. And then you just go back, start, you just stop because you're going to go watch it again. So you can stop whatever. Or other movies, maybe that's why, because when you catch something usually on in the middle, often maybe it's a shorter movie that you maybe have some things to do, but you could sit down and watch the rest of it, so you kind of. And this one, that it's a 3-hour movie and you're only seeing a little teaser clip of it. And you're like, I can't sit down now, but I'm going to watch this Saturday. It's like that used to be the. So, and then I remember I show my kids this movie. It's got violence in it. It's got stuff in it. But when can I show them this movie? Because this is a really good movie,
Yeah.
I think, when we talk about the historical inaccuracies and all that, and, and they come out and you start going down the list and it's kind of like, and I'll be honest, when I first saw the movie, what suckered me in and what got me is, we're talking about, oh man, it shows like a real gritty look, like this is what combat was like in the Middle Ages and everything. And I think in answer to your question, John, that you asked earlier, and I know we've discussed it, hey, what is the mark of a 90s movie? I really think that a lot of what's in this movie depicts it, right? I think when you get into the 90s, I think you tend to get into more of the epics. I think more of the, hey, we're going to show a grittier side of things. We're going to have serious overtones. It's going to be more historical movies. Like if you look at the two movies that we watched, if you look at the two movies that we've watched so far, like between this and Apollo 13, I mean, they're both about historical events. One, 30 years before the 1995, one, several hundred years before 1995. But I think that's kind of what the mark of a 90s movies is, a little bit more of a serious look at like historical events. And I think with this, yeah, you do, when you do start reading about, well, what was the real history, you do start to bump against it. And when you're like, okay, well, we're really seeing like medieval, battle techniques. Cool. And then you find out, well, they didn't wear kilts for 100 or several hundred years. And it's kind of like, okay, well, all right. But what really hit me this time was this is just a beautiful story. And yeah, I do. And I bump I bump with the best of them when all of a sudden it's like, well, we're saying the character's name is William Wallace, but we're not even really depicting him how he was depicted. So it's like, well, why not just write a story and change all the names and then, and just go for 100% fiction. And, but this time when I watched it, I was able to let all that go and just really enjoy just the beautiful story.
Yeah.
And it just, it was like the whole thing. And when I say beautiful, I mean, sad, epic, triumphant. It was just wonderful. All the feels in this movie.
Yeah. I almost don't even think about the historical part inaccuracies. So it's nice to be like disconnected from it a bit. I mean, I know them, but like don't want to know them. Like, yeah, I'll go, this is the history,
Yeah.
Or it's not even, it doesn't even have to be the history. This is this story.
Yeah. Inspired by true events, and that gives it its permission to do it what it wants. Because look at that scene that supposedly we just talked about supposedly isn't even, maybe didn't really even happen.
Right.
Such a powerful scene.
Yeah. I was going to ask you guys about this one because I was wondering it watching it this time around, and I had kind of forgotten a little bit of like, it made me go back and just consider even some that we've done in the last several years. Movies with intense and violent battle scenes. And I'm watching this movie and I'm thinking, is this one of the first movies that really has this intense of a large scale violent battle scene like this? And I kind of went back and I was like, well, we've got, I mean, maybe not quite as violent and gory. We did Glory in 89. We did Ran in 85. So we've had movies that have had kind of large scale battle scenes. But part of me wonders too, like you have this one in 1995. You have, Saving Private Ryan was at 97, 98 maybe. Anyway.
Something like that, yeah.
Yeah. And I'm thinking of like what was it?
98.
Okay. So I'm thinking of like the up close, just brutality and violence of the scene where they're charging the beach in Saving Private Ryan. And I go back to this movie and I'm not making the case that this movie is like the first movie with a battle scene like this, where it's, we are up close. We are, handheld shaky cam. We are right in the action watching people's limbs and heads get chopped off. I guarantee that's probably happened before, but can you guys think of any other movie? Like, is this movie kind of a turning point for large scale battle scenes in film? Or is there another movie that you can think of that you're like, no, actually I'd say this one's more influential?
I think ultimately that might be, I think though, I think that's before that Glory would have.
Yeah.
After that, I also think Thin Red Line has a certain, I mean, the ones you mentioned, like obviously Saving Private Ryan, you jump right to that. But like Mohicans, on there, where when I say that it like really opened your eyes to the way like battle could have maybe really been and would have really been with like the bloody up front type of thing, and how where it wasn't sugar coated. I think Glory and I think Mohicans stood out for me before that.
Okay. For me, this might have just been the first one that I ever saw, because I saw this movie before I ever saw Glory, and I saw this one before I ever saw Last of the Mohicans. So maybe it was just, for me, this was the first time I remember seeing a close-up, hand-to-hand combat, large-scale battle like this.
Yeah, same here.
Platoon, but not as epic.
Yeah. Yeah.
I threw on there.
All right. Before we head over to 3 questions, any other scenes you wanted to point out? Any other characters that you love in this? Just anything else you want to say about Braveheart before we move along?
Go see it. It's just fantastic.
Should I cause an argument between us and the Shirley podcast and ask you which one is better, Gladiator or Braveheart?
I'm going Braveheart.
They pitted those two together, and they got into a bit of a thing over which one was the better movie.
Well, that's just looking for a fight, but yeah.
Well, yeah.
I'd go with Braveheart. I've seen Braveheart. I'm just judging it by the amount of how many times I've seen it versus Gladiator. I love Gladiator, but Braveheart I think is superior.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah, I remember getting into this debate with people. I think it's just it's just the flavor of what you're looking for. I really, to say the superior movie, do you guys remember the Friendly Fire podcast? They did Gladiator and Braveheart. And they didn't do it as a head-to-head, but they talked, and it was interesting to see which side they came down on of that great debate. Mm-hmm. But, yeah, I'm gonna kind of pull back and just say reject it. I don't think they're intended to go head-to-head.
Well, that's what I'm saying. It's like they're trying to call, so I'm just playing along.
Right.
Pat just rejected your question. It was even before the 3 questions, so I was shocked.
There's one thing if anyone else wants to give thoughts on the Gladiator Braveheart thing, please. But I just have one final thing I want to say about the end of the movie.
Yeah.
Are you sure? I'm not okay.
No, go for it.
Especially this time, I struggled with the end of this movie, and it kind of and at first I'm like, man, this is just an awesome movie. Am I really being all nitpicky and saying, well, I didn't like how they wrote this, and this is a da. And I don't think it is. I think it's one of those things, and we'll say spoilers. So, the movie The Great Escape, spoilers. Dennis, do you know where I'm going with this?
Yeah, I think
You always want, and I know you've said this, you want McQueen to make the jump in the end of The Great Escape, right? 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea.
I love you.
You want Captain Nemo to get back into the submarine and get off safely. And Dennis, I remember talking. And in this movie, I just so much get to the end and want him to walk into that castle and say, "Nope, this is a setup," and take off. And I just, I every time I get there, I'm like, ah. And I know it's already. Go ahead. Good.
He gets rescued at the end.
Yes. Yeah.
They have a plan.
Right.
And he gets out of there, and they don't.
Right.
That doesn't happen. So it's like that's where I replay it, because I'm like, they're there. You just can't.
Yeah.
No, you've got a plan. I think the first time I saw it, I was thinking that, and I knew it wasn't going to happen, but I believe it. But it was so funny. I think I mentioned that to Danny today. I was sort of saying I was going, that's going to be one of the points I bring up. This is another one of the films, just like the Great Escape.
Yep.
You see the person, you watch it in the hopes that this will change this time. And it's so funny that you said that, man. It's hilarious.
No, and I do, and I think of it, and it's like, come on, they're all wearing kilts, and we're supposed to wear kilts, and the Battle of Burgoyne Bridge didn't have a bridge, and the Battle of Boop-a-da-Bop wasn't really Bop-a-da-Bop. Okay, let William Wallace live in the end of this, guys. Come on, have a director's cut, have an alternative ending, whatever. But I just, and then I kind of, I'm like, I found myself kind of going down the road of, you know, he was so good at smelling traps. Why was it all of a sudden he said, yeah, we've got to do something. And you know what happens if we do nothing? Nothing, you know, and what's the risk if we don't go? Nothing. And then he just walks right in, and it's like, oh, come on. You know, I really, and that's where I'm like, I don't think I'm being critical of the movie. I think I'm just so bummed because this awesome character.
Because you're looking for him to live, that you feel
Yes.
way. Where mine is the rescue by the other people. So I'll throw that part out.
Yeah.
At whatever, but at the end something happens. You know, it's like one of those things where somebody's gonna there's an arrow gonna be coming in from somewhere that does something, and the guy who's with something's gonna happen, and it doesn't happen, and it's the saddest thing every time I watch it.
I know. I totally agree. And it's sort of like, you know, it's like, guys, come on, watch Robin Hood, Prince of Thieves, right? Yeah, I know he had an American accent, but that's okay because he had like black powder that he shot with flaming arrows and it blew up, and can't you guys bring in some of those guys?
Yeah. And the thing is, it's like probably when that happens every time, and I am, you know, you have the hope that it's going to happen, that he's going to live this time you watch it. I respond scene where he gets betrayed. I kind of fall back on my couch, tears in my eyes. It looked like I give up. He died, you know. But that is so good that you brought that up, because it's literally what I was going to bring up.
Okay, yeah, and I think we've talked about it too. The list of movies that you just.
Oh yeah.
Oh yeah.
And then there's that scene at the end when William just smiles, but you're not sure if it's a sad smile or a happy smile. He's just been trying to get home this whole time, and yeah.
Then there's Cool Hand Luke.
There's that. Or there's the scene where you're worried that this time William's going to die again, but then the DeLorean pulls up and Doc Brown gets out and he's like, William, we got to do something.
Gotta do something about your
Got to do something about your kids. So what do they turn into the English or something? No.
All of a sudden you see those little like flaming circles open up, and you hear on your left, and then like a whole bunch of people come flying out and just absolutely lay waste to the castle.
I know we made a list. We started making a list or talking about films that did have that impact on you, because it's not even like It's a Beautiful Life. Like that one. I'm always there's what's his name? Roberto Benigni.
You got it. Yeah. Bernini.
Yeah, and spoiler alert for people, turn off if you were going to watch that film, which that's definitely suggest. But you know, to a degree, there's a happy ending.
Yeah.
But he marches up, and no, it's like, how does he get through all that? And literally, they're that close to being rescued, and then he dies, and the kid gets reunited with the mom. That's great. But yeah, I have something else happening. He's going in there with a smile, and he's going to trick the guy, and he's going to come out and be like, ta-da! I always think there's something like that happen. It doesn't happen.
All right.
That's movie's so good.
It is. It's such a good movie.
Yeah.
All right. It's time for 3 questions.
He asks each traveler 5 questions. 3 questions. 3 questions.
It's impossible to answer.
Impossible because you don't know the answer.
Nobody could answer that question.
I want to ask you a bunch of questions. I want to have them answered immediately.
What you just said is one of the most insanely idiotic things I have ever heard. At no point in your rambling, incoherent response were you even close to anything that could be considered a rational thought. Everyone in this room is now dumber for having listened to it. I award you no points, and may God have mercy on your soul.
Question number 1. A prima question, no. No, I don't think that works. I don't know. I don't know what the Latin word for question is. Prima precundis? Sure. Favorite large-scale battle in film?
Film's deep.
Do I have a daily double button? Because that's mine too.
Yeah, that's everybody's. It's crazy. Yeah. Or at least maybe not Pat. I don't know about Pat, but that was Let's go on Lord of the Rings.
Yeah, it's just you hear, and this is all, you know, the technology nerd in me. The more you learn about what they went through to create that scene. They wrote a new piece of special effects software that has been used ever since. Like some of the stuff they went through just to put that together, it's just outstanding.
Yeah. So much death. What can men do against such reckless hate? Ride out and meet it. I mean, that also has some of the best dialogue in a battle scene, too. Just keep quoting Theoden the entire time. The horn of Helm Hammerhand shall sound in the deep one last time. Let this be the hour when we draw swords together. Fell deeds awake, now for wrath, now for ruin in the red dawn. Forth, Erlingus. Yeah. All right. I know what I'm watching when we're done here.
Yeah, I mean, if you go on YouTube, there's going to be like breakdowns of Helm's Deep. Like there's going to be
sure.
Scene evaluation, breakdown, autopsy, all those things where they literally just like pick it apart. Like that's how good that one is. Yeah. What would I say the next? I don't know. I gotta go Saving Private Ryan too.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's a good one.
You see that? I think that forever even shaped my view of like, not that I had like this pro view of war. I don't think anybody has that, but you have a romanticized, yes, an unrealistic view of war. And when you see that, you're like, wow, that's God. I remember thinking for the first time in my life, because my dad had a very senior, like there was a friend of his, very older gentleman who had been a tank guy in the war, and I always wondered why he never glorified it. My dad was a coach. My dad tended to sometimes romanticize it because, like, the college swimming program was like battle, and it was like you're going to, and he was like he loved history, but he talked about it almost in this admiration way. And this guy always kind of shied away from it a bit. Was just like, with the crazy, like crazy, like he thinks he's a general, and all that. And I always wondered why he kind of had that. And when I saw Saving Private Ryan, and three men behind me were in tears, and two of them walked out of the theater to go gather themselves. That's a power of a scene that is done so realistically and brings back that to those men, that it also like teaches you where I remember going, my kids have to watch this at some point. Mm-hmm. Have a better understanding of what war really is. So I'm going to go with solid second place is the opening of Saving Private Ryan.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Those are epic choices. And I especially, it's interesting because they're large in scope, but in Helm's Deep, you have like fantasy, adventure. I don't want to necessarily say fun, but I mean, it's something you can watch and enjoy, right? Good versus evil and so forth. Saving Private Ryan, it doesn't have that same sense of fantasy fun, obviously. And Dennis, you
don't feel guilty.
Totally
you would feel guilty if you somehow enjoy Private Ryan scene. Guilty,
but it has.
It was probably, like you said, thoroughly enjoy it. You could be engaged in the battle. It's cool. You could say it's cool. You really can't say it's cool about Saving Private Ryan without sounding like an ass.
Yeah, and nor should you. And that wasn't the intent of the film. And like you said, to the point where you had heard of veterans or witnessed veterans that were just the emotional impact, because it's giving a glimpse. The art is that it's giving you a glimpse of this horrible, traumatic experience. So
it was. So to start that film like that and literally hear the sobbing behind me and like thinking, I wasn't snickering or anything. I didn't think it was funny, but I was just like, I knew people. I was just kind of like, who's crying? Like I'm thinking, I look back and I'm expecting, honestly, a woman. Mm-hmm. Not being sexist, I just figured it was somebody's girlfriend who was stunned by the battle, the brutality, and I wasn't thinking it was a guy or a man. And it was senior citizens, and they had the hats on and stuff, the veteran hats. And one of them was first hugging the other one, and then they just both kind of went out. And it wasn't like they were literally like, you could just tell war buddies watching this. Mm-hmm. And it just like, for the rest of the movie, I mean, you're locked in. Mm-hmm. You're not.
Mm-hmm.
You're taking it. It was just you're locked in. So the end was huge, and it was literally the row behind me, and I just kept hearing sniffling, and kind of and I literally thought it was. And I looked back, and in fact, one of them had his wife there, elderly woman as well, and she was also consoling. And you just are thinking, wow. And it remained, when I go back to my dad's friend, he had told me one time about the stories of he says, when he kind of downplayed the whole thing, he was like, yeah, war is not fun. He goes, buddy's head, because he was in a tank, and he said he went up, came down without a head.
Yeah, and
He'd top, boom, and pretty much half of his head was gone. He falls back into the tank, and it's how do you this is an eye opener. You actually experienced that. It wasn't a special effect. So yeah. Anyway,
you experienced that as a 17 or 18-year-old kid when you're still, developmentally forming, right? It's yeah. The only scene, my mind is going through so many different options, but the one, and I wish I remember, the town, but it was in the movie Lawrence of Arabia, and there's a scene where he's gathered up all the different Arab groups, and they're assaulting a city on horseback, and I've read about that scene, and it's all the extras that they had, I think, were Bedouins and people and they had this scene where there's literally hundreds of horses and people on horseback charging through the city. And, before CGI, it wasn't like you had a bunch of extras that you could control exactly what was going on. And I remember the scene, but I don't remember the name of the town and all that kind of stuff that they were going through. And you watch it, and it is just incredible when you think of, could you imagine what it would be like to even filming the movie, not just the real life thing, but seeing people going by, hundreds of horses going thundering through a town. Awesome scene.
Pat, is it Aqaba?
Yes.
Yeah.
That's it. And if you watch that, and again, it's, you're looking back and seeing something from the 1960s being filmed, but when you look at what you're seeing, or when you see what you're looking at, it's oh my goodness, this is amazing. So it's a great scene in the movie. And just, even in real life, just filming it, that would be beyond bonkers, crazy fun.
Yeah.
And terrifying at the same time as riding through a town like that with a bunch of horses and all that. But that's pretty cool.
Yeah. All right. Question number 2, favorite example of a Mel Gibson character being spurred on to exact vengeance.
Oh, jeez.
Mine, I had to think through some of these, but I think the one that has the best for me, I really enjoyed seeing this in the theater. I actually think I may have seen it twice in the theaters that I enjoyed it so much, was Payback.
Yeah, great choice. Love it.
Yeah. Also produced by one of the other producers of Braveheart, Bruce Davey. But yeah, I remember enjoying that movie so much, and just his sense of humor throughout the entire thing, and Chris Christopherson as a villain was fun, and yeah.
$182,000. No, it's 63,000, whatever the heck it is.
Yeah.
I just want my cut.
Yeah.
Will you listen to me?
Oh gosh, I love that movie.
Throw the original. I'm going to go back to Mad Max.
Oh yeah.
Ah, there's another one that's fantastic.
The last scene of that is excellent.
Yeah.
I almost think without that scene, you don't have. Well, maybe you would have had Road Warrior, but.
Yep, two very good choices.
Pat, I'm still back on the Payback one, and tell him it's 70,000. 70,000. My suits are worth more than that.
That's right. Hold the backpacks up, kablam! Are you still alive? No, he just killed my suits. That's just mean, man. You're not going to kill me, are you? Oh God, that movie is so good.
Yeah.
When he pulls the guy in that's the dealer for his wife, and he's just like, I want to know where you get this stuff. Yeah, it's right here. So he just reaches up and pulls his nose ring off. It's like, it's just fantastic.
Yeah.
Ring, 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 ring. You were right not to trust me. Kablamo. Oh boy, that's a fun bit of business there. Mad Max is a fun bit of business.
Mm-hmm.
Last of the V8 supercars.
Well, I think that's great because that scene in Mad Max is like, from what I recall, and I was checking back, I don't think there's like he doesn't say anything really. Mm-hmm. Talking. I'm not a bad man. He's like trying to talk to him as he's just setting up this intricate way of killing him at the end. He just goes about it just as cool as can be. And then they don't even show the guy. They show the explosion in the car, but like, it's just a cool scene. Like, I'm not gonna.
Yeah, it is.
Not gonna talk to you. I'm not really gonna do a whole lot of anything. I'm just got a thing going here. Mm-hmm. I could drive away cool knowing that you ain't getting out of this. But you have some hope that maybe you will.
Right.
There's always hope, right?
I want to see you struggle to kind of get out of this, but it ain't going to work. And there's a coolness about the fact that he knows that it won't work.
Did we, Pat, did we get yours?
Boy, I'm trying to think. I mean, I think I daily doubled with the two that are mentioned already. Okay. I mean, I just name any other Mel Gibson movie, but those two that we've talked about are just so strong. I have to double with those.
All right. Bo, what about yours?
Hamlet.
Oh, nice.
Oh, yeah.
Big fan.
Yes, I like that version.
Mm-hmm.
Excellent. All right, we're going to end on a high note. Number 3, what is the worst form of torture or execution?
I think the rack.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's just, I don't know.
Yeah.
But I mean, none of them sound that great.
No.
Yeah. From a personal note, I'm going to say that I think the worst would be sleep deprivation.
Yeah.
Like after having the spine, the herniated disc and not sleeping for almost a month. Yeah. I mean, like limited sleep. I remember just I used to joke like, oh, sleep, okay, big deal. You keep somebody up. And I'm like, the trip you go on, man, is just, I mean, I could see that's a tough one because you break down, you just lose it. You get more irritable. You start almost hallucinating, aggravated. The more you think about it, you can't say that's just like a neurotic sort of crazy, like, and you can die from it. So, I didn't know that till I looked it up and I was like, oh God.
Right.
I was just thinking this is all a joke. It's like when people say like a water torture, you know, you think
right.
Okay, it's annoying maybe, but like it's not really torture. You know, that's what like in my head I always used to think in sleep deprivation. Okay, it's like the neighbor who just keeps you up, you know? And, if you really, really do that, that's vicious. But otherwise I would say from a physical standpoint, maybe being quartered.
Yeah, that would kind of stink.
Yeah.
All right. Pat, did you do yours or did you say the rack or was that Bo?
I think Bo said the rack.
Oh, you said the rack, yeah.
I don't know. Wasn't there, you know, you get trapped in a small container and then you put some sort of a, you know, rat or like a snake or something in there. I think that would probably be bad. That would be a bad form of torture.
That wouldn't be great.
No, I think that'd be rough. That'd be rough.
All right, now I feel like
buried alive would be pretty bad too. That's sort of just that neurotic, like you're fully aware. It maybe in some ways the other ones, if they're quick and it's not really, I mean, it's not as torturous because it's shorter. Anything that's going to be a long duration, you have time to just think about it, and that's the worst.
Yeah.
Okay, now listening to you guys, because as you've started to list things, like they sound pretty bad, but I'm sitting here going, oh dear God, like they're gonna call in a wellness check on me after I tell them the one I came up with.
Oh God!
Oh boy!
Because you guys are like the rack, drawing and quartering, like being buried alive, and I'm sitting here going, oh God, you're gonna need to hold all my beers here in just a second because
you're gonna have to clear your search history.
Yes, pretty much.
Were you on the work computer, John?
No, I was on the home computer. I was on the home computer. I know better. And this episode is not being transcribed, so I'm not going to get called into work tomorrow because it left a transcription in my Google Drive account. Allow me to introduce you to a form of torture called scaphism, otherwise known as the boats, because scaphism comes from the Greek word meaning boat. This was reported by Plutarch in his writing The Life of Artaxerxes. It was an ancient Persian method of execution. And when this was written up, the first mention of it is Plutarch's description of the execution of a soldier given as punishment by King Artaxerxes II for killing his brother, Cyrus. So here it is. And I've had it translated into more modern language, so it can easily make more sense. Basically, here's what happens: the king ordered Mithridates, who was the name of the soldier that he was going to be executed, ordered him to be executed using a method involving two boats. A punishment as gruesome as it was horrifying. Here's how it worked: they placed him on his back in one boat and covered him with another boat that fit perfectly, leaving only his head, hands, and feet exposed. The rest of his body was sealed inside. They then forced him to drink a mixture of milk and honey, which they also smeared over his face and body. This attracted flies and other insects, which swarmed him as he was kept exposed to the sun. Inside the boats, as his body processed the food and drink, waste accumulated and began to rot, creating a breeding ground for vermin and maggots. These creatures started to infest his body, entering through his wounds and consuming him from the inside out. Over the course of 17 agonizing days, he endured this horrific ordeal until he finally died. When they removed the top of the boat, they found his flesh eaten away and his body infested with swarms of insects that had taken root in his decayed remains. Good night, everybody.
Oh, Lord.
Happy Tuesday.
Yeah.
I'm done.
Yeah, that's got everything. It's got the kind of what Pat said. It's got the 10 days or 17 days. It's a long, drawn out period of torture. Again, it's not 3 days. It's not 2 hours.
No,
it's 17 days.
It's pretty awful. Because I remember watching this movie as, the first time I saw this movie, I was probably 16 when I saw Braveheart for the first time. And you don't actually see any of the most violent part of the drawing and quartering. Like, you don't see them. You just see the reaction to him being cut open in that final part as he's being executed. And I remember as a 16-year-old watching this and almost having to turn away from watching that scene, even though you don't see any blood at all in that scene. And I remember almost having to turn away from it because my imagination was filling in the gaps and telling me, oh, dear Lord, this is like the most horrible way, short of something like crucifixion. This is one of the most horrible ways that a person could be executed. And so, I mean, that was enough for me as a kid to not even see it happen, but kind of just have it implied as to what's happening. And then I go and read something like this, and I'm like, I'm really glad we lived now. Because those ancient people, they were messed up.
Well, modern-wise, I don't know. There's one with the CIA. It says something about, I don't even want to look it up. It says rectal rehydration.
I don't know. I mean, no, never mind.
Rectal rehydration. I have no idea.
No.
That doesn't sound good. I'm not clicking.
Sounds like something you get at that spa you really don't want to go to ever again.
What kind of spas do you go to?
Not good ones.
Obviously. Yoicks.
Uh-huh. All right. Does anybody have anything happy they want to say?
I like squirrel. I like turtle.
Oh, there you go. Yes.
Turtles.
I like corn. Yeah. All right. Well, everybody, just if you have any any cute things in your life that you can go hug for, I don't know, like a good 20 minutes or so, go do that.
Yeah.
I think you need to like reverse the question order for that.
Do that one first.
Yeah, I think so.
All right, maybe in the editing, I can take question 3. And
I'm sitting here looking up tortures.
Yeah, don't do that. You're not going to sleep again for a month if you don't do that. If you do that,
holy jeez. Wow. Anyway,
I'm not saying that history.com isn't a good site, but you're going to find some twisted stuff if you go too far.
Here, this one's light. This one's better.
Oh,
is there a worse torture? It's just a question somebody posed, but it's lighthearted enough. Is there a worse torture than the bottom of your foot itching while driving? There we go. I'm gonna end with.
That's true.
You're driving and the bottom of your foot itches and you can't take off your shoe.
That's true. That's true. Yeah.
That's the worst humans. That's the worst humans need to endure.
I'm sorry. I could have put another one in here. If Woody Allen were to direct a remake of Cool World, starring Bobcat Goldthwait as the main actor, that would be the worst form of torture.
Yeah.
That sounds rough, yeah.
Or if there was a movie where a duck had boobs and was taking a bath.
That sounds like fun.
One man's fun is another man's torture.
That movie came out on 4K Blu-ray not that long ago. Did you want me to grab you a copy?
Yeah, you can go along with your rectal rehydration.
Yeah, there we go. For some reason, that form of torture sounds like something out of Star Trek. I don't know why.
Yeah.
Isn't that what they did remember in the Batman movie in the 60s when they had to like turn everybody to dust? Is that what they did to get them back into their human form?
Yeah, that's what they did. Yeah.
With Commodore Schmidlap, was it? Yeah.
Schmidlap. Oh my God. Yes.
The fact that that's in your brain and you can pull that up back.
Oh God.
Unfortunately, that's another movie I watched about 15 times.
Commodore Schmidlap. I don't know what to say.
I don't either. It's a little scary when Scaphism and Commodore Schmidlap are the two most recent things in my brain. I don't know what to do with that. So let's do this. Hey, everybody. Thanks for being here for Braveheart. We've got some good movies coming up for the rest of this month. January is History Month, and history is not always as brutal as it sounds if you do a Wikipedia search. But over on Patreon, we had the Pop Culture Rundown 1995 episode and a Patreon short for Wolfman, the movie that's coming out this year. And then so far this month, we've had Apollo 13. This time we had Braveheart. Next week, you can come back to Scotland with us again for Rob Roy. Then we're going to head to the Canyon of the Crescent Moon, Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade, as part of our 10th anniversary rewatch that we're doing each month. Movies that we've covered here on the podcast over the course of the last 10 years. Then we've got Nixon, and then we finish out the month with Les Miserables, the 10th anniversary concert. So that is what we got coming up for the rest of January. Thank you, gentlemen, for being here and storming the battlefield with me and winning our freedom.
Thank you as always, John.
Yeah, thank you.
Suck in the guts, guys. We're warrior poets. All right.
Is that what we are?
Yeah, sure. Why not? Do you want to be a warrior poet?
Sure.
All right. You're a warrior poet then.
Sweet.
There you go. Bo McWarmbold.
That's it right there.
Yeah, Bo McWarmbold, the warrior poet. All right. Everybody be excellent to each other. Go watch some good movies, and we will see you back here next time.
Bring the lights down low, it's time to show. Lights, camera, you know what we mean. Behold the magic of the silver screen. Some movies rock, some movies shock. They're powerful, alright. We cover them all on your favorite part. So many movies we can't choose. Even when you win, you lose. Life moves pretty fast. Some will fizzle and some movies last. I understood there would be no math. It's the 30-something movie podcast. Be excellent to each other. Please have a word to your mother. They're from the best decades. Movie magic that never fades. Lightsabers clash, phasers set to stun. Action packed from dusk till dawn.